You're listening to Trust Talks, the podcast that brings you real stories and insights from people doing incredible work in our community and beyond. From everyday experts to extraordinary collaborators, whether you're here to learn, get inspired, share a laugh, or just enjoy some honest conversation, we're glad that you're tuning in. Welcome back to Trust Talks for another episode of our... No, I've completely butchered that.
Take two.
Take two. Welcome back to Trust Talks with Matt and Tanya. Today we're talking about something that's definitely changed the way that many of us work, and that is flexible working.
Yeah, while some companies are calling people back to the office full time, others are embracing a more flexible approach, giving staff the freedom to work in a way that suits them where possible.
And we could have recorded this podcast from home, but we've made the we've made the effort. We've come in. We're recording it in person.
I'm so glad. Some of us more than others, Matt. I see you've gone for the classic video call look, eh? Business up top and pajamas on the bottom.
They're not pajamas. They're trousers. Normally, I appreciate when you're on Teams, you know, you might be wearing joggers or whatever down below. But no, today I've made the effort. I've bought some trousers. I'm dressed up.
A real commitment to professionalism.
I'm very professional, yes.
But all jokes aside, flexible working is a big topic, and we'll explore that today. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're actually discussing a very interesting topic, well, at least we think so, and that is flexible working.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a game changer for quite a few people over the last couple of years. Whilst a lot of organisations are obviously mandating full-time return to the office, I know the NHS has got a flexible working policy now. So today we are going to be talking to a very special guest. We've got Jenny Rooker, who's the head of health and wellbeing for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare with us. Hello, Jenny.
Hello, nice to see you both.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about what does that mean for like productivity, what does it mean for wellbeing, team connections and that sort of stuff. So Jenny, why do you think flexible work has been such a big topic over the last few years?
Well, certainly in the NHS, we've been talking about it since 2019 and before that with our NHS People Promise. But certainly during COVID period, it became a topic that we had to embrace and we had to all get on board with due to social distancing and all of those other restrictions.
We didn't really have a choice, did we?
No, exactly. And it's certainly...
We will stay home.
It's certainly sort of fast forwarded perhaps where we would have been anyway. We just had to do it within a couple of weeks rather than perhaps a couple of years as might have taken otherwise.
So Jenny, what was your first experience when we had to start readjusting during COVID to be more remote and hybrid with technology?
Initially we had the technology, didn't we? Had these online platforms, but the majority of our staff hadn't ever really used them before. So I think when we did all go home, or the majority of us that weren't working in clinical settings, it was in getting to know that technology, how it worked, embracing it, making sure we could all actually access it. So I think there was certainly some teething troubles to start with. And even now, we have connection issues. People put themselves on mute. People leave their camera on when maybe they shouldn't do. So we do still see some of those happening quite regularly in meetings.
If I was applying to an organisation, why do you think flexible working is such an important part of... It's almost like an expectation now that you should be able to have flexible working and...
It really is an expectation now. And I think if we, as an NHS and organisation, didn't offer it, we probably wouldn't recruit very many people. They would go and work in a place where they do have that control and flexibility over when and how they do their work. So certainly we have staff in areas and roles that do lend themselves to quite a lot of flexibility, both in terms of hours, but also where people work as well. There are restrictions in certainly some of our clinical areas where the flexibility is less, but every job role in the NHS and arguably with most jobs do have an element of flexibility that can be built into their roles.
Yeah. My wife, she works for a local GP service in Southampton. And I know that they have to be there in clinic to be able to see patients face to face. But I know they do also do some triage. They can do it from home, or they don't actually have to be in clinic. So yeah, I suppose it doesn't have to just be applied to office workers.
That's right. And lots of patients expect and would value virtual consultations, video consultations, phone consultations. So actually a lot of our patient populations are going down that way as well. So yeah, so e-consults and all of those things are something that we can embrace as well.
One thing that does come out of flexible working, some employers definitely do think that remote workers are less productive. Why do you think that is? How do we tackle that possible misconception?
That's interesting, because lots of the research shows that actually people that are able to work in a way that gives them choice and flexibility, they're actually more productive.
I mean, I feel more definitely if I'm doing a working from home day, I definitely feel like I can get more crammed into that 7.5 hour day.
So I guess what we need to start thinking about, and what our leaders and managers need to think about, is we need to judge people on their productivity and what they're producing, perhaps not so much how we have in the past, how many hours they're sitting in an office or on a ward. So it's about really judging what output people are giving, and then whether they're more productive or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We can't just say, just because you're at home, you're hanging your washing out, not doing any work, because I don't think that's true. So changing the mindset and the culture from how many hours have we actually seen you to what are you producing and what's the quality of that work, and then going from that space. But like I said, lots of research has been done and have seen an increase in performance and productivity when people have control and flexibility.
One thing we also noticed, and I'm sure we all experience that to some degree, is working remotely. As much as it has some great benefits, there are issues. People have come to now say that they prefer more hybrid. Obviously, if they're able to have that option. And one of the things is there's lots of interruptions also at home, or loneliness. So what?
No, I'm just thinking, like, probably every day around about 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
The postman is always knocking on the door.
Yeah, be right back. BRB.
Literally, I'll be like, oh, here we go. The wife's bought some more stuff off Vinted. Okay, give me 2 secs. I think I'm going, obviously, collect the post.
No, totally.
It's like a ritual.
And then, of course, as we always discuss, because Matt and I both have cats. I don't know if you have any pets, Jennifer, but they sit right on your laptop, making it very hard to focus and type.
I've seen a lot of cats in Zoom meetings and on Teams meetings, just walking across the screen.
I don't know if you saw that video of the lawyer a few years ago in America. They were doing something in court, but virtually. Yeah. And the lawyer, I don't know how, put like some sort of filter on that basically turned him into a cat. And the entire video is just this guy being like, I'm really sorry, Your Honour, I'm not a cat.
Oh dear.
So, yeah, I'm sure we've seen it all.
Totally.
And I think, sort of back to the question around sort of some people preferring that hybrid.
Yes.
It's where we need to think as much as we can within the constraints of service delivery is its choice. So staff are able then to have a workplace that they can come into, be it a hot desk space or meeting room space, and perhaps if they want to, then another area to work, be it at home or in another location. So we can then choose where is the best place to be to do what I need to do. Because sometimes, like I said, at home is not the best place. So having that choice and lots of spaces available. So it makes it tricky, I guess, for organisations to think about their estate and their office spaces and what they need to provide for staff. It can be really tricky if we're then doing sort of agile spaces.
Yeah.
If you're having a moment where you are working from home, what other tips would you recommend we do to, make the best of that and make sure we look after ourselves?
Yeah. certainly planning breaks in between meetings, but not just for yourself, educating and role modelling that to everybody else that you work with, because often it's not you that put the meetings in, it's other people.
Yeah.
So is there any rules perhaps that you could agree as a team? Maybe 50-minute meetings. They're always an hour because that's what Teams tells us.
Fits
So-
in nicely into the schedule, doesn't it?
You can manually change them to 50 minutes or 45 minutes. So again, you've got that natural break. Getting up and walking around as much as you can. I did have a staff member say once on a meeting that she, in the morning, left her front door, walked around the back, came in the back door, and that was her commute. She was then in her workspace. And at the end of the day, she'd reversed that. We've certainly noticed that the usual commute that lots of people used to do was a really, really good time to get in the mindset of work, perhaps process what's happened during the day. We used to have lots of time between meetings where we would maybe drive from one venue to the other, or at least walk from one meeting room to the other. And in a virtual world, we haven't perhaps been very good at factoring those sorts of natural breaks in. So we would get staff that had been perhaps back-to-back meetings for 6 hours and hadn't really moved, or at least got up and had anything to eat. So I think we've had to train ourselves to build in breaks, think about how we're going to start and end our working day so we get a work-life balance even maybe when we are working from home. And as you said, there's lots of things that are very difficult to do virtually. Building relationships with each other, getting to know each other, getting to know new staff can be really difficult virtually. It's quite hard to be creative on a Teams call because you can generally only have one person speaking at a time. So we do, I think, in lots of areas need to come together for those areas. So team building, being creative, problem solving are much better done face to face. So if we can then allow perhaps staff and teams to have areas where they can work from home and areas to come together. I guess the key is you got to be in the right place to do the job you've got to do. And if that job is writing a report, perhaps actually being somewhere quiet on your own is the best place to be. If you want to talk about strategy and come up with new ideas, it's probably better to be together. So that's sort of a top tip, I guess, really. Be in the best place you need to be to do the job you've got to do.
As much as, yes, flexible working is a great addition to the way we work in this, in our generation now. What about people and staff that cannot work? That's not part of their remit. They have to be in the office or in a clinic-based setting or whatever that may be for them, but they are more face-to-face.
We often think, and we've talked a lot about flexibility being in the sense of what we might think as agile, so working from home, working from different bases. But it's much bigger than that, and it's certainly stemmed from something as simple as part-time working would be classed as a flexible working arrangement. So even lots of our clinical staff enjoy the benefits of flexibility in lots of different guises. So part-time would be one. We have clinical staff working compressed hours, so shorter shifts, longer shifts. We have staff that work in job shares, so that would be when 2 people fulfill one job role. We've got staff that work annualised hours contracts, term time only contracts. The list goes on and on.
You earlier mentioned a few tips, for people that have that option or maybe have a bit more of a hybrid way of working, which I think is the pattern that we are seeing a lot of. What would you say, or any sort of tips and mental health and well-being tips for staff that are seeing themselves in their working environment for their whole day?
Probably quite similar things, actually. Prioritising taking breaks. And we do see areas that are really, really good at that. Their leaders role model it. The team encourage each other to go on their breaks. Perhaps before you leave at the end of the day, is there time to fit in a debrief? Talk about what happened maybe that in that day or on that shift. So you're not taking home some of those experiences. You've got time to share them and talk about them. Somewhere to go as well, where you can go sort of away from any patient areas to have those breaks. And we do have those in our area, certainly. So staff need time away from patients and somewhere that they can go and relax.
And I think getting out into, like you say, the open space, a bit of nature, is always such a boost.
Yeah, definitely. If you're able to get off the wards or out of the office, then...
And I think making sure you make time for nutrition, isn't it? Because I'm guilty of that, and I think even you are, Matt, let's be honest, where sometimes you can go a whole day and you just full on and you forget to drink and eat. And then at the end of the day, you have this really bad headache and you're thinking, why do I feel this way?
Or you
Well,
grab something really unhealthy
I
because you've
know.
only got a vending machine.
So it's good to just employ that and be mindful, isn't it? Like take a moment to do even, like you say, stretching or a quick breathing exercise just to get some oxygenation to your brain and some nutrition. And hydrate, guys, hydrate. I can't say that enough.
If anything, I'd say coming into the office is actually worse from a nutrition point of view. The amount of biscuits that people have stashed in the office. And I'll be like, oh, it's just one. And then before you know it, you've eaten like 16 biscuits.
That's why it's helpful being vegan sometimes, because I can't eat all those biscuits if they've got milk or whatever in them.
I reckon if you went to any NHS office or ward, there'll be a drawer somewhere that's full of biscuits or chocolates or sweet treats just to get people through the shift.
And on that topic, what biscuit would you choose to have? What is your favourite biscuit?
Anything with chocolate on would be my choice.
And are you a dunker? Because I know that's quite a big topic in England. Like, do you dunk your biscuits in your tea?
Yeah, nice and quickly though, so it doesn't go too soggy.
Oh, and you, Matt? How many seconds in the tea?
I'm a coffee drinker.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm not really a dunker, to be honest with you.
I am also a coffee drinker and I ain't no dunker.
All the important things are discussed here, aren't they?
They certainly are. Jenny, we've nearly run out of time, but before we let you go, one final question. Some companies, again, from a little bit of research I did, Spotify, for example, they've gone public and they've said that they're happy to recruit people remotely, because why would you want to limit your candidate pool to only being within like a 45-minute drive of your office? If you've got fantastic candidates up in Scotland that could do it remotely, why would you not want to take those people on, as opposed to just limiting yourself to where you are located in the country? Do you think that flexible working is here to stay?
Definitely. Yes,
You
definitely.
heard it right here, people.
Yeah,
Can we have that in writing?
It's written in legislation and certainly in a lot of policies, as we've mentioned, the right to flexible working. And we advertise it on our recruitment information around flexibility. So yes, certainly it's here to stay.
Well, there you go. Jenny Ricker, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, for joining us. It's been such an eye-opening discussion, and I think we've all learned something new.
Yeah, it's clearly flexible working is not just a trend.
And it involves so much more than just a combination of being at home or at work. It's flexible in whatever space you find yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny.
No worries at all. Thank you very much.
And a big thank you to you, the listeners. Whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music or YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our series for all new episodes coming out over the next month or so. We'd love to hear your feedback as well. You can get in touch with us via socials. Just search for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.